Hello, welcome everybody to the third episode of the Friday Club of this academic year. For those of you joining for the first time or haven't listened in for a while, I am Dominic Moon and I am the Senior Education Consultant at Metropolis Education and I am your guest host. Excuse me. Firstly, a huge thank you to Campus 24 and the team here at the Friday Club for asking me to be involved. I am enjoying this enormously is the word. And a special mention to our friends at AMKIS, who are a key partner in the broadcasting and promotion for these key interviews. So, as we continue to talk to some of the industry's leading experts, figureheads and worker bees, providing them with a voice on a whole host of subjects, today's guest is very special indeed. We are lucky enough to be joined by international and domestic recruitment royalty. And as it's a relatively topical, and to give some comedy context this Friday, if there was a Top Gun class, this person isn't Iceman, Hollywood, Jester, or even Maverick. This person is Viper, the best of the best. If you haven't seen Top Gun, the original, I can heartily recommend. Okay, so now I've had my fun. Let us welcome someone who really needs no introduction, someone who's probably the most widely respected by everyone in the sector from all sides of the fence, by parents, by agents, and definitely by other schools. This morning's guest is none other than the very famous Rachel Scannell. Welcome, Rachel.
Good morning, Dom. I don't know quite how I follow that, so thank you very much for that. I'm sure some people might find other animals to mention rather than Viper, but anyway, we'll get there.
Well, I had to add to it because, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about adding a bio to give some background about the person, this is Rachel's. Rachel joined Bromsgrove School in 1998 as a French and Spanish teacher. And then in 2004, she was promoted to assistant head of the whole school with specific responsibility for marketing and missions. And after 24 years, she still loves her job. I felt as if I needed to add to it, Viper.
There are some things that are going untold, Dom. You know, secrets, I'm afraid.
Well, that's very much the way you are, is that you're very sort of modest and sometimes self-deprecating, I think, in terms of how you go about. But 24 years in, still loving it, always smiling. Why? What is going on? What is it that you love so much?
Yeah, I genuinely love my job. I think I am so lucky. You know, I work in a fantastic school. There's never a dull moment, believe you me. No day's the same. And I really like meeting people, being with, you know, either the children, the prospective families, teachers, agents, and everybody that I work with across the sector. So yeah, I enjoy it. You know, if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing it. But I'm really lucky that the school that I'm in has taken marketing and admissions really seriously. I was very lucky about that. You know, I've played a key role in growing the school over the years and, you know, and really enjoyed its successes.
Now, I always laugh and joke when I see you because on your badge, it says assistant head, and then it says either communications, marketing, external relations, that kind of stuff. And that's quite, that was quite insightful of the school back in those days to put somebody so senior in school in charge of a department that in certain schools still to this day is seen as very much, oh God, support. I'm not going to go down the support staff route again, but certainly second-class citizens in school.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I was so lucky. Tim Taylor was the headmaster. He's the headmaster that appointed me back in 1998. And in 2004, he decided on this role and he put it out into the, you know, outside world. I didn't apply for it at first because I thought, I'm a teacher and I'd done a bit of marketing for him. You know, I'd done some open mornings and things like that. Didn't apply. And then the deputy headmaster at the time came to me and said, I think the headmaster would like you to at least put an application in. So I did. But what's great about Bromsgrove is he made this role part of the school executive. And the school executive is essentially the headmaster, the bursar, this new role, and then the two, well, at the time it was only one head of the prep and pre-prep. We now have two schools. So that was made me just really central to the decision-making body of the school. And I listen sometimes to some of my colleagues and I feel desperately sorry for them. And I share their frustration that they don't have a similar position within the school because there's not a day when a decision's made that doesn't somehow impact or require my input. So I think that Tim Taylor, I mean, obviously long since retired from Bromsgrove, had some real foresight there to what was important for the future of Bromsgrove. Definitely, I'm not saying it's right for every school, but I think we've been very lucky.
Let me just hear all those marketing admissions people out there going, keep going, Rachel. This is what we want to hear.
Because it's true. You know, I've been given a real power to do all sorts of things and been right at the centre of any decisions that were made, whether it was regarding introducing the IB, our Saturday school provision, taking on another prep school, increasing our prep school boarding. I was given those, you know, the ability to have my input. And we're so lucky. The Bursa and myself, the head of our 2 prep schools, really do get on well together. It's not one of those schools where we're all battling each other. And so it's been great for the school.
Okay, let's wind back the clock. So I've known you nearly 2 decades now, pretty much since you started. And at the time, now correct if I'm wrong, there was this whole, and this may link in quite nicely with that whole, what Mr. Taylor did with the school. There was a whole rebrand and a very conscious decision to take Bromsgrove from what it was. I mean, a lot of the people listening are trying to find Bromsgrove on a map, perhaps, I don't know. But it took it from what was a relative minnow to the powerhouse that it is today. Now, you and we have discussed in certain circles, other schools go through these rebranding exercises, but yours was the real deal, was it not? Like
it was really big. So it was about 2004, 2005. We had the then new headmaster came into Bromsgrove. And he recognised, actually, it was a really, really good school, and it was a really good school, but he called it the stealth bomber of HMC schools. We were really under the radar, and we were a lot smaller. So we decided we wanted to just change our identity or define our identity, actually. I mean, it came to me, I was at some national competition, and Bromsgrove's senior first team were doing brilliantly. I mean, I think, in fact, I can't remember, I think we were possibly made the champions or something. At the same competition was my prep school playing, doing equally well, and you had no idea they were connected at all. There was no visual connection in any way. I think also the messaging was quite different across the schools. There was completely different uniforms, completely different colours, completely different messaging, far too many words. And so we decided we needed to focus on it. So it was a massive audit. We audited absolutely everything, as I know other colleagues do in their schools, from all the literature to the buildings to the signage, even the waste paper bins. We were constantly just looking at everything, and we involved loads of people in it, which I think was important. We looked at tone of voice, attitude, what car we wanted to be. I can't remember her surname. She was fantastic. Davina. I don't know whether you. Anyway, Davina came in, and we did the customer journey, the messaging from pre-prep right the way through to the senior school, and that was pretty. You know, realizing how the messaging changed and tonally how things changed. And then eventually, after having looked at absolutely everything, we wrote a paper called The Soul of the School, which is, in fact, in preparation for this, I had a reread of it last night, and it's actually quite interesting, the things that we were looking about. You know, what did we want to do for the future and everything else. So we then launched our new brand. And I go back now, and actually I reflected that during COVID, that actually really helped me again, going back to what our tone of voice was going to be like, what our attitude was going to be like. I went right back to the beginnings, looking at, you know, that alongside mission statement and how we were going to act. So we did the big launch, did massive presentations to people. I spent a fortune, I think, on kit and brollies to, you know, everybody looked the part. And then it was about after that, there have been some really painful, well, not painful, that's exaggerating, but moments where enforcing it and keeping it meant that, you know, on occasion, you know, I was a bit like the brand police. Actually, I was lucky. Actually, that's brought me back to who I involved as well. At the time, I was so fortunate. I had a governor on the governing body, a marketing governor, who'd done all of Sainsbury's rebranding. And he was so useful. I mean, he was a real taskmaster. There was no way I was going to be able to shirk it. But he kept me on, really driven on it. And he said to me about what sort of disciplinary measures might happen at Sainsbury's and how serious it would be taken. I never had to go down that line. But I do remember you have to always keep a real close eye on your PE department. And one day I spotted that they all had bought, you know, like, so perfect. We had Pantone 201s our colour. They'd got Pantone 201 beanies, fine, it was cold, you know, they bought, but they had pom-poms on top. So I'm afraid, I still to this day, I'm sure they hate me for it, I made them cut every single pom-pom off. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure somebody's still got one hidden in a wardrobe somewhere, but yeah. So rebranding was really important, just the whole messaging. We wanted it to be a family of schools. We wanted children who joined the pre-prep to understand that they were going to be leaving the upper six of Bromsgrove Senior School. So yeah, and it was, whilst it took a lot of work, it really was crucial, you know, and it set the journey going really.
Is the journey over, or does it ever continue? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
I
think messaging wise, you know, I sound like I'm going through. I'm now my fourth headmaster. You know, I only married number 2, but anyway, you know, a new headmaster comes in. He's going to obviously want to look at things. I'm sure he might want to review the mission statement, what we stand for. You know, over time, have things changed? You know, in our mission statement, we talk about tolerance. Actually, should we be talking about tolerance now? You know, and I think those things we will question again. I'm never getting rid of Pantone 201. It would be too painful. Even our bins are painted Pantone 201. I mean, everything is Pantone 201. But yeah, I think it's always right to review it. I think refreshing sometimes. And obviously, I can't even remember how many years ago, we took Winterfold into our family of schools as well. And so, you know, I think it's important to continue to look at that.
What's just to give people context, how big is the school nowadays? What's the whole school roll, including all your prep?
Yeah, so it's just under 2,050, so it is quite big. So Winterfold standalone, 300, and I think we're about 300 and something there, but no boarding.
Yeah.
And about 15, 20 minutes from the school, I'm really different, which is, I always was really very aware that I couldn't have 2 prep schools that were the same within such a close area. So a very different feeling school. Our pre-preps just over 200, prep schools 520, and that's with 100 boarders. So again, I'm really pleased that senior school this year is quite large with 1,034 children with just under 500 boarders. So overall, very big school now.
Okay. So I suppose looking at, you know, here's Rachel Scannell, the sort of the most respected, amazing recruiter, full of energy and all this kind of stuff, and a large school. And once you get going on that, I suppose life can seem quite easy from people looking at you. I'm not saying that in that way, but I mean, but you know, the average school now, average senior school, for example, is just a little over 400 if they've got boarding. What advice can you give to those small schools who compete seemingly against much bigger brands, bigger, more successful schools, larger, but how can they market themselves and recruit? Because, you know, going back, although it's, you know, 18 years since you started the admissions marketing, it's a journey, and it wasn't always plain sailing. What kind of advice could we give to those people looking up at the bigger brothers and sisters going, damn them?
I think that you need to be really clear on as well. There's quite a big difference about those of us who work in admissions and those of us who work in recruitment. I'm really clear. My job is recruiting. I have to recruit a large number of children. You know, I recruit just under 200 boarders a year, and then also international summer school, and then the day children as well. So the scale doesn't make the job any less challenging. I'm not a school where I have waiting lists for 3 years in advance and rolling programs. It just doesn't work like that. It's year on year recruitment. So, I mean, I'm also really fortunate that all of my prep schools feed up to the senior school. So my job is made a little easier like that. I think for smaller schools, they've actually got you know, a really good thing that many people are looking for a smaller school. You know, some people might look at Bromsgrove and say, actually, it's too big for us, you know, and so that is somewhere where they can focus. They also, you know, be proud of what you've got, be strong, don't get distracted, you know, don't think you've got to follow people the way they're going. I was with 2 schools the other week that said, you know, there's a bit of FOMO around. Do we all need to follow each other across the world? Absolutely not. You need to know what works for you, what your school appeals to, and put your energies into that. So if you do well with, I don't know, local prep schools or prep boarding schools, fantastic, put your efforts into that. But I knew I was wasting my time. I can't even remember what it was probably 2005. With the then headmaster, I went around masses of boarding schools, you know, prep boarding schools in the country. And eventually one headmaster, he's now retired, slightly haughtily told me that Bromsgrove wasn't posh enough. So I decided to give up, really. But I didn't give up. But, you know, there are certain things that you have to do. So I think for smaller schools, yeah, just focus on what you're good at. And where you've had some success, because, you know, I've done that in the past. You know, I've followed somebody to a market and it's been a disaster for me. Don't do that. That would be
yeah. Okay, so don't get blinded by the noise of others, I suppose, and these budgets. Don't go to Reykjavik. I think we're trying to. But
you've always said that's where I'm going to head next to. I can probably, you'll be disappointed if I never go.
Okay, so what's interesting is the Pantone. What was the Pantone colour again?
201.
201. So that starts, and what I find interesting is the more and more senior schools are buying up by the more and more standalone preps, the consolidation of the market, etc. Pantone 201 starts when they first walk through that door with their socks and their berets on, don't they? And then I call it the brain washing. So you sort of want to make sure they don't leave until sixth form.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all. The vocabulary, the soul of the school, the tone. You mentioned tone, which is really interesting, I think. Yeah. Is it consciously guided to making sure they all stay, or is it that's just what's come out of having a good brand identity and everybody being on board?
I really want everybody to stay. I mean, this year my message to the common room, and again, I'm really fortunate I get to speak to the whole common room every term, was retention as well. You know, okay. People love an identity. They love to be part of something. The bursar had 2 children at the school, and they were horrified when their mother painted the front door. She didn't do it, but it looks like Pantone 201. And I think you sort of end up infiltrating people a little bit in that way. But yeah, I mean, I want people to be part of something. I want them to know that's the next step. That's where they're going to go to. And even the parents love the fact that, you know, they come in to buy memorabilia for when the children leave the school. So it's important.
Sounds like the bursar was just saving a couple of quid on the door to me.
Yes, probably, yeah. Shouldn't do that.
No. Okay. So don't get distracted. Retention. When you say retention, do they just think, "Oh, here she is again"? My God, leave us alone for 5 minutes so we can teach.
I think the problem is that we've got used to, you know, in the last few years, we've been really lucky that I stand up, you know, every year and sort of say, we've done it, we're full, we've reached our targets, fantastic. I am getting more anxious, I have to be honest, about, you know, the years that are about to come. And so I think it's really important, the effort that goes into recruiting a child and a family. We need to work really hard to keep those children. It's not just, oh, Johnny's leaving or Johnny's going elsewhere. Somebody needs to take responsibility for that. And why are they going? Where have we let them down? What have we not delivered on? And I think those conversations have to happen more and more. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole today, because I'd love to do that at another point. Okay. So you've made a conscious decision, I think, many years ago to go down the international route. You were kind of one of the early adopters, I suppose, of the international markets, and embrace that. And I think that's quite visionary almost. If other schools are listening in now, how do you decide on a market? How do you warm it up? How do you be successful? And quite frankly, can you give us a few of your secrets, please? Because there are many schools out there who are looking and thinking, I can hardly keep the water above here.
Yeah, I honestly have no secrets. I'm one of those people really willing to share. You know me, I think it's important that all of us in our sector are willing to share. If I just go back, actually, again, it was back to Tim Taylor. He started on the international route, predominantly Hong Kong and predominantly Asia many years ago. And I think he too recognised that Bromsgrove possibly wasn't going to be attracting lots of British boarders, and we needed to go somewhere. And this was an area that we could do. And I think that means that we've been working with international students for an extremely long time, and we're really set up for international students, and they're part of our community. Our alumni database is full of international Bromsgrovians as well. So I often listen, I have a little notebook whenever I'm traveling. I love listening to conversations, particularly over a drink or two. You pick up all sorts of things, where people are going, who they're working with. And I'm not proud. I rang Dave Watkins the other day. I needed some help. I wanted a couple of agents. Gave me a couple of agents that he works with that he really likes, and this was actually in Mexico, which I think you've just been to. But he gave me a couple of agents. I linked up with them. So I look at where our students have come from. I look at the various reports around of what's countries which are represented that possibly Bromsgrove doesn't have any children from, and then I try and make links with agents. I'm still a firm believer it's all about relationships. I'm afraid you have to build up relationships. I know most of my agents, many of my agents really well, and even former agents, I still like to keep up with them. And I think you have to build a relationship. You then have to support the agent, the educational agent, or invite them to school. I'm always willing to do fam trips here at Bromsgrove, but equally, I'll schlep to see an agent in a particular country wanting to see who they are. I never expect a return on my first visit. In fact, often not the second visit. Sometimes.
Hang on. So, because this is very interesting. So you don't expect a return on your first visit.
Yeah.
And then your second visit, because most bursars out there, if you're listening, pay attention, expect you to come back with 5 kids in a suitcase and away we go, right?
So yeah, exactly. No, I probably would go 3 times before making a final decision that might not be the market for Bromsgrove in particular. I suppose going back to where I started about the numbers that I need, there are some countries I think, and some events that I know are brilliantly run, that I think, oh, I'd love to do that, it'd be really good. But actually, I've got to be realistic. I have to bring back numbers because I have to have the ability to convert them. So that's why sometimes I don't do particular events. But, versus you have to put an investment in, and some of these agents have been working with other schools for a very long time. Why should they suddenly try you out? And they may try you out and then see how you look after the family, how you deal with them, how easy your admissions process is, how pain-free it is, before deciding to go on with you. So I think it's important that you work out a relationship with these people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would never, I look at the thing I would do to save versus some money, if I'm really open, I would never take 2 people to an event. Honestly, I would not. And I understand why some people do, but that's a heck of a cost that I couldn't justify. I do take my headmaster to 1 or 2 key events to markets where the parents absolutely expect to see the headmaster. They don't want to see me. But other than that, I will travel on my own. And I think that does cut down the costs a little bit. I think it's also good to have that consistency. The consistency of who's coming, who knows the agents, who knows those that work for the agent, I think is really important.
Yeah. 2 people, if they both turn left as well at the down the gantry, then it's going to be even more money. It's a good point about the consistency and the continuity, because it's all we always say to our schools, take your head if he's brand new, let him see everybody, roll the head out, and then let him step back. But if you're head on your own and you do an event, you've got to do all the follow-ups, because you can't just say, you aren't as important as you thought you were, Mr. and Mrs. Agent. I'm going to hand it over to one of my subordinates. That seems.
So I really get irritated with schools that use overseas recruitment trips as some sort of perk, and they share them out. And so-and-so can go this trip, so-and-so can go that trip. It also means a lot of covering of lessons. I sadly had to come out of teaching because I couldn't be in 2 places at once. Families were arriving late and I was missing lessons. So I gave up teaching. But I think that even an event I was in last week, I saw families that I'd seen a previous year. They came back to see me. They don't want to see somebody else necessarily. And I think for the agents, to know that you're willing to help them, do TV interviews or radio interviews or whatever, gives them some sort of comfort. They know what you're like.
Yeah, that's a
just on the turning left, Dominic. I think that it's really, when you are expected to do a long haul flight, get off the other end and be all it's not just like doing a particular job. When you're selling your school and you're really passionate about your school, you give so much. It takes up so much energy. And I'm of an age now, I'm afraid, where I do need to look after myself a little bit more. We have a great travel policy. I don't travel business for anything under, the 5.5 hours. But I think for some, I feel really terribly sorry for some schools where people representing their school do an exhibition right up until 5 o'clock at night, then at 6 o'clock leave for the airport and know that they're right at the back of that plane for the journey back home and expected to be in school all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed next morning. Because the thing about attending events, it's not just the event, as you rightly said, it's all the follow-up. We write to each individual family afterwards saying how lovely it was to meet them, encouraging them to visit, engaging with them again. So people that think it's an easy ride are really mistaken. It's absolutely exhausting, as you can tell.
I was about to do it on me. So we've just come back from Mexico and America for our trips, and that's the hidden price. But
and also every week, most events are weekends. You lose your weekends. I'm not whinging. I love my job, but I think it's very easy from the outside in to send some people off, who maybe are not quite as vocal as me, and say, yes, up you go, go and recruit and then see you next Monday. And possibly not look after them as well as they should do.
Oh, that's what those loo days are for. As I hear I can still hear them groaning. All right, you guys, the loo days, if you ever get a chance to have one, let me know. It'd be interesting to know what it feels like. Okay, we are sort of slightly running out of time. Just a quick one. No, not at all. British borders, man alive, any ideas, any top tips? Just keep working your channels.
I was with somebody the other day who said one of his governors had said to him something like, really need to focus on year 9 girl boarders. What a profound statement. Yeah, wouldn't we all love them? That's why prep boarding is honestly so crucial to me. And I had a conversation with the prep headmaster this morning. It is such a good feeder to the senior school of the British boarders. We're really lucky at Bromsgrove. We started many years with the Gurkha families.
Yeah.
So we've got a large number of Gurkhas. I think at the moment we've got about 125 forces children at school. And I always aim, one of my targets, if I'm being honest, is to maintain a minimum of 180 British boarders at any one time. But if I'm honest, from outside year 9, as I mentioned, the other prep schools, I recruit very few into year 9 British boarders. And then the only other real point of entry for me for British boarders would be 6th form. I've done all the, when I remember writing once to the Queen Bee, of the forces bases and asking permission to go. And I've sat in the hubs and done Shrivenham like everybody else and recruited some lovely children. But there are fewer and fewer. British boarding is still in decline. We're all going to be fighting over the same borders.
Okay. Was it Olivia Denton, I think it was in those days when it was in charge of the CAS, I think, something like that. Go on.
Queen Bee. I remember writing to the Queen Bee. I thought it was hilarious. But
Yeah. Okay. For those people out there, it is tough. And I think really to say, keep this, Rachel's been doing it for a long time and still smiling and really enjoying it, but a little bit of anxiousness about the coming years. So it will be a time where your Pantone 201, etc., all those little bits may well be more important than they ever have been.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've got to become really disciplined as well. I've got to focus on the areas that I do really well in and make sure that I get the maximum return on those children, and those families that, we have 5 or 6 families visiting the school every day. I need to make sure they have a really good visit and that we convert them to work.
Yeah. And I've been on your visit, and I can tell you, Pantone 201 is everywhere. Right, listen, because we never know where these are going to end up, we always have a stock bunch of questions at the end, just to finish on a slightly warmer note. So I've got a bunch of questions that I just want to shout at you, and you can give me your answers if that's okay. Okay. Who is your hero?
I'm going to have 2, my husband and my mother. I've only been married for a few years, so I'm going to have them both, if that's okay.
Okay, he's on the honeymoon period.
Both put up with me, Both put up with the fact that I'm away from work for a lot of time.
This is an interesting one. You've traveled pretty much every single country in the world. If you could live anywhere, ...
Honestly, Dom, I'm quite a home bird. I know people might not believe it. I actually love living at home. I've just moved back into my old family home from when I was a teenager. So I genuinely think I like to be where I live. Although having said that, I have a little getaway in France, which is my hidey hole, where I love indeed. And then when Chris was in Asia, I did love the life in Asia. So I always say to him, maybe one day we might go and spend some time out there. But I think I'd always come back home.
Okay, lovely. Biggest fear?
Silence. No, silent. Being on my own, I can't bear. If I have to, I couldn't. I like to be with people, and I'm not very quiet.
We can tell. I've had yes. We know. Beach or snow? Ooh.
So beach, I think, is a lovely holiday for a week, but then I get bored. So I like the snow. I like the mountains. I can't ski. I'm hopeless. In fact, I broke something on ice skating, so I don't risk it. But I do think there's something about crunchy snow. I don't like the sloppy, dirty, grey stuff, but I like crunchy snow.
Okay. Karaoke song. Ooh.
Never. Can you see me in a karaoke band?
Yeah.
I haven't, honestly, I wouldn't have a clue. I love singing, as in, in chapel, I'm sure the children think I'm probably very loud.
Okay.
But no karaoke song I can think of at all. Having said that, I've just bought a karaoke machine for one of the boarding houses, so maybe I should go and have a little go.
Any of our troops out there, if you can get Rachel on picture on karaoke, there's £100 in it from yours truly. Rachel, what's your nickname?
Oh God. So friends outside of school call me Lady Rach, but in school I think I've got very Scary Scannell, and then probably ones I don't know about that possibly are not very flattering, but anyway.
We'll go with Scary Scannell.
Yeah,
if you went back in time, where would you go?
Oh God. Maybe my early 20s. I know I'm old now, but I do think of myself. I love to think of myself as being a lot younger, and I just need my body to remember to keep going. I used to be able to burn the candle at both ends, and now I find it a little harder. Anyway.
Okay. And what is the one thing that you'll never do again?
Something like this, Dom. No, smoke. Never again.
That's quite right too. Okay. Now, everybody, I apologize because I've indulged myself because I've enjoyed this so much, and to get Rachel's time is hard to do. So I wanted to make sure we maximize on having you with us. So Rachel, I hope you have enjoyed that, and you will.
Thank you, John. No, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. No, thank you for everybody at the Friday Club. That's us finished for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with the first male, I think, of my stint of hosting. So there we go. Girl Power's been rocking the Friday Club for the last few weeks. Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheerio. Bye.
Bye.